Hi guys, welcome to the Women Unlimited podcast, and today our guest is Ibijoke Faborode, the CEO and founder of ElectHER.
Ibijoke Faborode is the founder of ElectHER. She has spent the last 5 years driving systems-level change to support women to decide, run, and win elections across Africa. Her work spans deep research, policy advocacy, election technology development, and the creative use of storytelling and arts to challenge societal perceptions and shift narratives around women in public leadership. On the economic front, she also is the proponent of the Africa Female Founders Collective, which is solving for gender and wealth by building a powerful support network to drive the visibility, investability, and scalability of high-growth women-led ventures across the continent.
This episode is sponsored by Ion Capital. Ion Capital is one of Africa's leading investment banking and asset management firms, with its UAE licensed multi-family office serving high net worth individuals and offices in Lagos, Abuja, and Dubai. Ion Capital brings global standards and deep local insights to every transaction. Get in touch with them by email. contact@ion.africa to discuss your investment banking and asset management requirements.
So what would you say the biggest challenges women face when they're trying to enter politics in Nigeria, and how does ElectHER sort of like support them in overcoming these barriers?
Politics in Nigeria is still evolving. I think Nigeria is still trying to define what kind of polity, it runs. Nigeria is an evolving democracy. And so you can imagine within the context of, the lack of structures, you keep asking yourself, where's the space for women, essentially? The space wasn't designed for women. A lot of the stakeholders or the gatekeepers are men. And for the system to be designed for women, you need more women to be at the decision-making table. It's just like when you don't have women in boardrooms, when you don't have women in top executive positions, it's going to affect the trajectory of every woman within that space. It's the same thing as politics as well. And I'm hoping that, we take some cue from what we're seeing in the corporate spaces where you have more women within, boardrooms now that are shaping inclusive policies that can accommodate more women. A lot of people still question why women should be in politics. If women should focus on their caregiving responsibilities, right? A lot of people, if you bring different people to the room today and you ask them, what is the face of leadership? They will tell you, I can see a man's face.
Yeah.
So most people do not necessarily associate women to leadership, and it's because of the historical precedents we've seen around leadership. Who is a leader? Who makes decisions? Who calls the shots? But I think as we see more women, that will change. Change over time.
So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And being a sponsor. I've had the privilege of doing some work and attending ElectHER events, and I think it's super inspiring what you do. So what inspired ElectHER and its creation to basically fill that gap in Nigeria's political space?
So like I always say, ElectHER is more than, just an organization. I think it's a vision, it's a ministry, right? It's me fulfilling God's purpose for my life. I mean, I'm not a really religious person, but honestly, when I think about the work we do and the generations it's going to serve and shape, for me, I know that this is beyond me. And that really keeps me going. The inspiration really is just mirroring my experience as a Nigerian woman and an African woman. I want more for myself. I want more for my unborn children. I sit in rooms where I'm the only woman sometimes, or I sit in rooms where, no offense to men, but a bunch of men that do not really understand and cannot relate with my lived experience essentially get to shape policies that affect my life, my entire life. And for me is, what can I do differently? I don't want to join the generation of women or Nigerians that just keep complaining over and over again. So it is about building structures, that can sustain conversations. It's about building structures that can re-engineer how we think about governance and participation as people. It's about, giving back and pouring into the country so that we leave the country better and greater than what we met, essentially, yeah.
So what would you say the biggest challenges women face when they're trying to enter politics in Nigeria, and how does ElectHER sort of support them in overcoming these barriers?
I mean, to start with, politics in Nigeria is still evolving. I think Nigeria is still trying to define what kind of polity, it runs. And Nigeria is an evolving democracy. And so you can imagine within the context of, the lack of structures, you keep asking yourself, where's the space for women, essentially? The space wasn't designed for women, the foundation, the space wasn't designed for women, essentially, and then it's systemic, it's ingrained. A lot of the stakeholders or the gatekeepers are men, which really limits, how people are thinking or considering or making room for women, even when it's, within the toughest scenarios. Biggest barriers for women, it's just a systemic discrimination, is that the system is not designed for women. And for the system to be designed for women, you need more women to be at the decision-making table. It's just like when you don't have women in boardrooms, when you don't have women in top executive positions, it's going to affect the trajectory of every woman within that space. It's the same thing as politics as well. And I'm hoping that, we take some cue from what we're saying in the corporate spaces, where you have more women within, boardrooms now that are shaping, inclusive policies that can accommodate more women. So yeah, it's sociocultural as well. Societal expectation around the role of women that, as
are we allowed to be leaders?
As crazy as it sounds, a lot of people still question why women should be in politics. If women should be women should focus on their caregiving responsibilities, right? And sometimes society just confines women within that, defines them within that as well. And a lot of people, if you bring different people to the room today and you ask them what is the face of leadership, they will tell you, I can see a man's face.
Yeah.
So most people do not necessarily associate women to leadership, and it's because of the historical precedents we've seen around leadership. Who is a leader? Who makes decisions? Who calls the shots? But I think as we see more women, that would change over time.
So, in terms of like practical things that ElectHER does, like from the grassroots to because I've seen we've had a lot of conversations like behind the scenes, and I've seen and participated in some of the work that you've done, which is so admirable. But I wanted you to talk to the audience a little bit about the sorts of practical things. Because when we say women in politics, it seems like such a big, tall order, right? Like as in, what are the things that we can be doing to sort of like affect policies, thinking through it before we get to an election, right?
Yeah, and I like what you said just now. It shows some consciousness and understanding the issue, thinking about it before we get into elections, because we're very reactive as Nigerians. It's when, as they say, as the odds is when you have burning issues that people are now like getting their opinions out there and all that. But the truth is that within the first 4 years of any electoral any cycle after election, most policies are shaped. And so it's important that we stay aware, we understand those issues as well. But speaking, about what ElectHER does, it's very simple. Our mission really is to see more women in public governance spaces, either in the elective or the appointed capacity. And that would mean telling stories, bringing the issues closer to the people. That would mean advocacy, trying to see how we can change policies, because when it comes to women's inclusion, in parliament and public spaces, without legislation, now, Nigeria has a lot of documents on paper, policies, but policies are not implementable, which means that you can't really penalize a party that doesn't really uphold the law. And so that's why you need legislation saying that, okay, for us to, you're going to be penalized if you don't see this level of representation, either as a political party or any structure within public governance. So really for us is how do we partner with lawmakers, male and female, to push for gender responsive policies? How do we observe elections to understand the considerations from the lenses of women as voters, as candidates, as officials? So we actually we organize situation rooms where we actually observe elections. We have people that collect data from the field. We commission surveys, rapid surveys, to just really gather as much data as possible, because really, people tend to trivialize the issues around women when it's not evidence-based and data-driven. It's seen as a non-issue most times. And I've been in rooms where politicians are like, oh, we'll come to that later. These women have come again. Oh, okay, let's just help them. Let's help them. What are you helping, essentially? So really is, you need people to understand the cost of exclusion. You need people to understand the opportunity cost of not bringing women in. And the way you can do that is to keep gathering the data, showing the evidence, helping people understand that women are playing in spaces. But when women are not playing in spaces, this is what you see. But for them to also understand, the role of women in society. So in elections, for example, women are women represent significantly when it comes to the voter population. So why doesn't that translate to representation when it comes to leadership? So it's convenient for the women to tie wrapper. It's convenient to get their votes, but it's inconvenient to get them to the table, and you can't really make provisions for them. So you see, that's why the work we do is important. You want to get stakeholders, you want to increase the awareness, because we can't blame it on the lack of ignorance anymore. From the part of government, the people, we all need to just wake up and understand that it's not just about women, it's about socioeconomic survival, it's about national development. There's a strong case for the inclusion of women, and that's what we really do.
What I love the most about this is, for Lara Unlimited, is really it's a leadership story. Is a woman who has done the work, who is very results driven, and wants to participate on a bigger level. So she's up for this promotion, she doesn't get it, it's given to a man. What is interesting is that at some point the company has some trouble and they're relying on her to fix it, despite not wanting to pay for it. So it begs the question around living in a society where women are expected to carry the burden of the work, but not necessarily paid for it or given the leadership opportunities, where it counts. So how would you sort of assess the current state of female participation in politics in Nigeria right now compared to, say, other African countries?
So you said something, and it's very triggering when I hear things like that, because why is it okay for men to bring us in when we need to fix? We're like the fixers. It happens everywhere. So if you look at every African head of state today, or historically, they were brought in at some point when the country was going through either an economic downturn or coming out of a civil war or something, right? So if you look at Liberia, you look at Malawi. It's happened historically, and unfortunately, I think that women need to use that to negotiate some more, because if you think that we can fix, if you think that we can operationalize things, then you might as well give us a seat on the table, and that's it. But speaking to the question that you asked, which I've forgotten.
So when you look at the political landscape.
Yeah, so what's the landscape?
The participation of
where does Nigeria sit at the moment? I mean, Nigeria is doing very poorly. I cannot, I cannot even, it's understated most times. When it comes to women's representation in parliament, Nigeria ranks lowest in Africa. For the giant of Africa, if you look at our population size, our economic size, it's really poor. And honestly, those are affecting the way the country is progressing as well. But then, you're looking at countries that have been intentional, like Rwanda, Namibia. I mean, Namibia has their first female president. And, when you look at a cabinet, you see how intentional she has been about bringing women with meritocracy and putting them in some of the most senior position, and that is why you need women. Because
it's so interesting because did the Tanzanian president become, who came first? Namibia or Tanzania?
You have some countries where you have the president and the prime minister, and so sometimes, one of those positions are seen in a ceremonial light, and so you still have the man making the decision. So again, it comes to mere representation out of tokenism and meaningful representation. And that's why the concept of equity and equality is something that a lot of people need to understand. I don't need to act for 50-50. If 20-80 will get me the job because I will get a seat at the table and be able to make decisions, then that's what I want. That's equity. If 80-20 we get where you have 80% women and 20% men because they will have the numbers right to make decisions, then that's what it should be. So equity is meeting women.
Again, I think you meant 80% men and 20% women.
No, so I know, yeah, so I'm talking about equity, right? I'm just saying, however it comes, right? Even if it's 80% women, 20% men, or 80% men, 20% women, right? Or 50-50. Equity really is meeting a certain situation or scenario where it is and designing specific solutions to ensure that, you can trigger change, positive change. And so that's what we've seen in cases where even though you have women at some, really, significant levels, you still don't see that translating into change. It's just, again, the question of mere representation and meaningful representation. So, yeah, I mean, it's really poor for Nigeria, and it's been that historically. Nigeria has never achieved up to 10% in parliament, for example. And so, when people talk about Nigeria, inflation, the economy, I'm like, look, the answers are there. When you're deciding the experiences of over 50% of the nation, and they are not brought in they're not brought on the table, or they are not included into how policies are designed or into how their lives are shaped, you will get things like this.
So you often talk about building a pipeline for women of women leaders.
Yeah.
In practice, what does that look like? What kind of specific strategies do you think that we can employ to make sure that we prepare women for leadership?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's in our little cases, in our little spaces, ensuring that we're mentoring people around us. We are providing access to opportunities and network. We're essentially referring and referencing the next woman. That's in our little corners, because I feel like we have individual, responsibilities, but also we have the responsibility of the collective as well. As a collective or as an organization, I would say that it is ensuring that women have access to certain information, because the lack of information sometimes, often means that people miss out of opportunities, in a timely or efficient way. And so the more they have access to that, because time poverty is one of the biggest forms of poverty affecting women. They have the responsibility of, care and so many things that sometimes the information doesn't get to them. So creating spaces intentionally for women is quite important, right? Second of all is just ensuring that we're intentionally building, programs and capacity development initiatives that can improve the technical prowess of women as well, so that they can occupy spaces based on meritocracy. I know that there are a lot of intelligent women that have been denied opportunities, but the conversation is nicer and sweeter, as they will say, when you have merit. There's just a certain level of confidence, that comes with that. When you are pursuing something with meritocracy, there's a certain level of confidence. I look at some of the rooms I get in, I shut every other thing down. In that moment, I think about, I have the capacity, so no. You're not going to tell me I can't do it. Yeah. I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to make my point. And then we're going to have conversations on intellectuals and as colleagues. And in that moment, I'm not a woman. So I think, those are ways that we can also support women. And I think that there are things that people might consider as non-tangibles. Supporting women into leadership positions means they're designing for them. If I look at the fundraising space, the venture building space, for example, and I'll reference that because we've started doing some work around venture building. It's a new arm of ElectHER's work, and that you still have the underrepresentation as well when you look at the ventures that are scaling, but also the level of the volume of funding coming to female led and owned ventures. Now, I've been to a couple of mixers or investor events, and maybe just about 10% women representation sometimes. When you look at the venture building space, at least at the VC level, most women are either just starting their caregiving responsibilities as new moms, navigating the family path and all that. And so I don't think that space sometimes is designed for them, because you have all those meetings and networking events where people have relaxed conversation and strike the deals, but women are absent there. So beyond, a lot of those are simple ways that a lot of stakeholders can also help to raise future leaders, ensuring that spaces are designed for them and they can take advantage of this as well.
Okay, so I wanted to speak to the Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan situation, which happened earlier on this year around International Women's Day, because I think that is something that we're going to remember in history for a long time. Absolutely. Now, there's so much to unpack there. She says her seat is moved and she was unduly, basically being mistreated because allegedly the Senate president had made some sexual advances and was now meting out these sorts of consequences or punishments by way of microaggressions, she had an emotional outburst, right? So there's a lot of room to sort of question how she handled that, given that women are already very accused often of being emotional, or too emotional for leadership. So it begs the question, was that the right way? Did you almost sort of even if you were right or wrong, did you sort of fall into their trap by being emotional? So there's that school of thought that she didn't handle it in the best possible way. But there's another school of thought that can highlight a lot of videos of men in the Senate or the House of Reps who have been more than equally emotional, had big reactions to things that didn't go their way in the Senate. So whether it was by they were raising their voices, whether it was that they were actually physical, even having physical altercations, right? So there's a school of thought that is okay, maybe there are men who have done exactly the same type of thing that Natasha has done in the Senate is on record. So we're not talking about philosophical things, right? And they were not deemed emotional. Yeah. So why is Natasha deemed emotional for her response, right? And then, so I'll just let you speak to that first, and then I will go on to my next sort of question.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and it's so hard not to stay triggered. You need to just be, as an organization, we had to be very calm in understanding, this case and in acting, because we also must remember what we're fighting for. And this is also quite important as well. What you described, or what actually, happened, is a classic case of what you call the double minority dilemma. Women are already underrepresented, but when they fight to get into those spaces, they have to fight all their lives to stay seen, to stay heard, to stay respected. And as you said, men have done worse. We have those on videos, Unfortunately, it's the boys' club, it's the men's club, and this is why you need more women, right? That's one aspect. And unfortunately, I think that this case presented an opportunity for an institution, the foremost legislative institution of the country, to represent itself properly. Now, I am not going to play good cop, bad cop, because I think that there's so many lenses, and there's so many lessons for both the institution and the individuals involved. Now, the institution missed an opportunity to show that it is a transparent and fair, entity. Because unfortunately they played into the institution versus Natasha, an individual, and it shouldn't be so. And an institution is bound by certain laws and policies and just certain institutional frameworks, and you should follow that regardless of who is involved. I think that's the way I see it. Again, this is my own contribution as Ibijoke, just Nigerian. You know, I try to separate that from what from ElectHER, because again, ElectHER is an institution, and so the institution should have taken certain decisions to make sure that both parties felt seen, felt heard, and felt respected. There should have been proper mediation. There should have been proper responses that were transparent as well, because after the 2023 election, a lot of Nigerians are struggling with trust. You do not trust public institutions. And so for me it doesn't help with that, with the trust deficits that we already have with these institutions. Now, in the case of Natasha, I mean, yes, a certain school of thought believed that she overreacted, and she reacted as a normal human, because I've played it over and over that how would I react? It's one thing for you to feel like it's you against the world. There's certain ways that we would react that we normally wouldn't react. But again, the consciousness and the awareness that women are already underrepresented, it's not fair to say that she has to take it in, but sometimes that's what we need to do to exist, to survive,
and to stay in the game,
and to open the door for all the women. Why? Because we carry the weight of all the women, just like the women before us, and after us we even carry, and that's something we must all remember. But again, like I said, it's not good cop versus bad cop. I commend her for staying resilient and speaking, because it's not easy when you have such intense opinions about how you act and the things you do, and you're under, micro scrutinies, and you still come, you still come out, with that, very bold disposition, and you know, the different ways that this is played out. I think there are different lessons on both sides as well, and like I said, it's just being conscious about the environment
that you're
and
in.
taking decisions that will not jeopardize where you are, but also the institution must be an institution. The institution must respect individuals. I wish they treated it like as Natasha an individual and not Natasha as a woman. Unfortunately, we cannot see that.
Again, on one hand, you can argue that Natasha should have known better than to have an emotional response, regardless of how she felt, because women...
it's not easy.
It's not easy
It's not
because
easy.
women in leadership positions don't get to react emotionally because they expect us to do that. You have
That's true.
And we have to own that.
You bottle all this up, and it's just a ticking time bomb.
Because like you
honestly.
said, the institutions are not created for women, right? So if there's already that bias that women are emotional and there's a lot of tokenism going on where it's like, let's just give them a few. Yeah. I think that there's a responsibility as a woman in leadership to recognize that and almost caution yourself in terms of like having an emotional response. Yeah. Part of that video, right, when she's walking through the Senate, putting her petition, and I wasn't in the room, but I can't get over watching that video, watching her walk down the stairs amidst all these snares.
And you still need to show up.
And she was, her head held up high. Yeah. I was like...
And that's why I said I respect to admire that. It's like, one thing to... It's one thing to really study.
The kahunas you have to have, like, to go against, like, an institution like that.
An institution, yeah.
It is heavy.
Yeah.
But then it did make me think, right? First of all, a lot of us women were like, oh, she shouldn't have done this, she shouldn't have done that, and all of that. But what was interesting to me was to watch a woman, right, who she had certain privileges working for her. She's beautiful, right? So she had pretty privilege. She's married. Mm-hmm. She has marital status, privilege. She's a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Highest legislative office.
And when everything sort of played down, even all that counting in her favor,
they just reduced that to...
They reduced her to nothing.
Natasha, the other gender.
So it speaks to,
relevant.
If that can happen to a woman that is in power at that level, on that level, shouldn't the rest of us be worried?
We should be.
About how this country
Absolutely.
And its institutions treat the average woman. So for me, that presents a bigger conversation, right, around how women can show up in politics. Then I think what was mostly embarrassing for me was also during International Women's Month, watching women who were in politics, who had been silent for the most part. So we don't really hear anything about the policies that you're pushing or the agenda that you're pushing for women. It almost feels like you're silent for most of the time. But an opportunity presents itself where there's this problem that puts women in leadership on the forefront, and we're coming out and saying, what exactly? It was very divisive. It was very embarrassing, and I find that like we now also need to be mindful, like when we're having these conversations about whether it's coming from a cultural, sort of perspective where it's like even you as a woman don't genuinely believe that women should be in leadership, or you feel like, well, he's a man, you shouldn't have said this, you shouldn't have spoken up, or you're just a woman. Like there's something I think culturally ingrained in us that I don't even think that even the women that are in leadership in this country really believe innately that they are supposed to be leaders. Like it's almost like they're servants in the grand scheme of things, even if it's supposed to be a leadership position.
I mean, I would understand why you would say that, and honestly, the average person would be triggered, but I've learned to grow a very thick skin since I started ElectHER, because as a human being, I have evolved. When I started ElectHER, any small thing, I'm triggered. No, women, no, but now that's why I tell people that I'm not an activist, right? I'm an advocate. The power of negotiation, getting into rooms that I can get into because I need to stay true to the purpose. Now, here's the thing, and it's not popular opinion, and I don't want to say this because, the part of social media is a very, very big one, so I tend to stay away. But here's the thing. The women that came on TV are human beings. In politics, politics is about self-interest. And I want us to look at the other, because I think that, most times it's easy for us to criticize people that might not take on the popular opinion. But I have two perspectives here. Yes, I do believe that when a woman is going through that sort of situation, she should have the backing of other women, because why? We feel a pain. We're a pain. We can all relate to it, So there has to be a way, regardless of how we feel, that we can show support for her, right? To make her feel seen and heard. Because like you said, going through all that and still showing up, trust me, you can't understand everything she went through, understand, when we were not even watching, in those rooms and all that. However, on the other parties, I think that it's important to extend grace to women. We mustn't invalidate their journeys, and they've not been silent, they're pushing. But you see, the institution is a very difficult one. The terrain is a very difficult one for these women. When you fight all your life, you are numb to a lot of things. You're barely struggling to survive. And when people are in survival mode, trust me, it triggers reactions that you don't even understand that it could. Because coming on TV saying that there are two, again, I don't know. And I tend to be very cautious about this. These women must protect their seats as well. Because also, there's a school of thought that says, oh, she didn't, carry the women in the National Assembly along. She didn't engage them before she went on TV, and they were put on the hot seat. And so in that case, some of them felt undermined. Now, I'm not justifying anyone's reaction. I'm just saying that sometimes, even when it's the uncomfortable truth, we need to understand where people are coming from. And already the world is already against women. The National Assembly is not designed for women. Those women must wear the caps like they are men and think like men. And the average male politician, what would they do? Very typical. So we need to understand that politics is politics. It's not about emotions. It's about self-interest. But like I said, there's no right or wrong here. And I would love, now let me use myself as a case study. I would really love that if I ever have to go through that I have the backing of women, because that is what I need to see to make me go through everything, right? I need the women with me. I need people that can resonate and relate with me. And that would definitely, encourage me or, and just get me through the tough times. However, I think that, like I said, it's extension of grace and not canceling these women, because it is already tough.
I personally don't believe in cancel culture. I think that we should always give grace. But I think that those women had the option of silence.
We can always, I agree, we can learn from that.
I think they had the option of silence in the if they were protecting their self-interest. I think that we should look at history and see that every time a female leader or a woman in power has ever been sort of brought down, or they're trying to bring her down, they usually use other women to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
They usually use other women to create a narrative around, what she is. What was also interesting to me was how they tried to girl her. And where they felt like, and maybe a cultural thing as well, where it's like, these small girls and she's a senator.
She's a senator. I don't care if she's 18 or 30 or 45.
And they try you may not have agreed with the way that she dealt with things, but I feel like there were better ways to represent not just Natasha, but women, the female population as a whole. And honestly, it was embarrassing.
I completely agree with you. But like I said, as because of the space I play. So when I have platforms like this, I help people understand the other side of the coin. Because sometimes, when I come on social media, I smile. I'm not as angry as I used to be. I just need to get things done. I need to get on with it, right? And I can't be distracted. So what I usually do is, the pain that I carry as a woman in leadership, a woman playing the political space, I don't think you even want to hear my stories, you understand? Honestly, the things that we see, the level of invalidation sometimes, but you just hold your head up high and you keep going. Now, she's been treated badly by the system. It is not fair. She should have the support of other women, you understand? But I think that there are lessons for every individual to learn. And I honestly wish Senator Natasha grace. I wish her, this is really bold. And I think that it's exemplary as well. Yeah. And I hope that she carries on the fire I hope she learns from this. I hope she evolves from this. And I really hope that she even steps into higher offices as well, because we do need more women like that. And I think that history will never forget, what
Oh
she
my
did.
God,
Yeah.
history will never forget her. So no matter how you feel about how she handled it, the boldness, the fact that like a woman actually took on something, is something for little girls to watch.
I agree.
And the same way I was like, I think that maybe next time she could think through like the impact of having an emotional reaction, because that's exactly how they want you to react. I think those older women in politics should also have thought about the fact that even if they disagree with how she did it, the way that they went on air to sort of like represent it, I think that they should have been thinking about more than just Natasha. They should have been thinking about the female population.
How does it affect how people see us, essentially?
Exactly.
Yeah. How are we reinforcing certain narratives around women?
And how are you being used to perpetuate a certain, sort of like narrative? Like, these men are not babies. Like,
no, they're not babies. No one should excuse, bad behavior.
They're not babies.
Whether or not you're a senator or, or even the president, no one should excuse bad behavior.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be thinking strategically, about these things, like when we sit on certain platforms.
A platform is a platform. I mean, that's documented. History is going to remember everyone's reaction to it, and it's going to be referenced,
Because I don't even believe you have to support all women. I don't believe in that, someone did something wrong, I have to rally around her. But I think that is important, even if you don't agree, to think about the import of your words and your stance, like in certain situations. So you might not like Natasha as a person, but you have to figure out
situation. What does it represent?
What does it represent if I say X? Look at what happened where we had men in the political space coming out and saying, you see, this is why they need to not have women in politics as in anymore.
All those calls I got as well. Sometimes it's like,
and I thought, do you know how many men have done from fighting each other and saying that Snake ate the money,
from turning cameras and ranting and having an emotional outburst on social media.
Nobody has ever said they're being emotional. Stop the tracks. Let's not have any more men in politics.
Yeah, it's really sad, and honestly, that's why I call it the double minority dilemma. If you look at Patricia Ite, the first and the only female House of Representative Speaker, House of Representative we've ever had, right? And what happened to her after 6 months? Suspended, and then that was the end of her. And then years after, of course, the verdict against her said she wasn't guilty. But then what about the psychological trauma? Men have done worse. And it's happened over and over and over and over time in history. It still goes back to, we need women in those rooms where the key decisions that affect the lives of other women and society in general are being shaped. Without that, nothing is going to change. Yeah.
So from your perspective, what are the specific sorts of like policy reforms that you think that, or structural changes that you think that Nigeria needs to adopt so that like we see things like, more quotas, more campaign financing, because that's a big thing. Like one of the reasons that women are not in politics is because
it's very
money.
Expensive, yeah. And women are already, economically disempowered. I mean, when it comes to policies or legal frameworks, I'll just talk about some of the things that we're doing at the moment, and there are two critical policies that we're backing. One that we're directly involved in as an organization. We supported the drafting of that bill, partner with a male legislator to put in that bill, and right now it's going to the public hearing stage. So it's gone through the different processes, and we're very proud of that. It's the independent candidacy bill, which means that you don't need a political party to run. And in the long scheme of things, that's quite important because political parties are gatekeepers, and unfortunately the major political parties don't care about women, and that's just a fact because they play lip service to it. But when it comes to the candidates the back, or when it comes to somebody stepping down, usually the women. And so we need policies and laws that can ensure that we democratize opportunities for women to run and win. The other one is the receptive bill. It's about a quota system, and honestly, We have reports we've done on these. I think over 120 women, 120 countries over 120 countries or so, yeah, have legislated one form of quota or another, either at the party level, either at the legislative level, National Assembly level or the parliamentary level, just to see that there is a conscious and intentional law that makes provision for women or underrepresented groups, to decide to run for office and to win as well. The law, it's a controversial law for a lot of people because they say, oh, it's discrimination, but there is such thing as positive discrimination, because when you have chronic systemic underrepresentation of women and it is stalling national development, it is stalling the lived experiences of women, then you need to take steps. And that's the responsibility as lawmakers, to ensure that this is done. In a progressive society, it's no brainer. I mean, you see countries across Africa, from Rwanda to South Africa to even, to Senegal, to Ghana as the first female vice president. Are we ever going to see that in Nigeria? I would say it's still a long shot. So really, these are really important. And as much as people say, oh, quota system is about handing things over to women, no. Quota systems have sunset clauses, which means that when you have a level playing field, you can then pack that. Also, quota systems ensure that, the penalties, that essentially ensure people uphold certain laws. And it's not from a place of privilege, it's from a place of power, it's from a place of intentionality. And that's why we need, those laws from political party levels, to even appointed, positions as well. Because in the long run, it is good for society and it's good for everything. The final thing for me is, I think in all our spaces and our corners, we must continue to talk about the cost of exclusion. The more the data is there, the more people will take it seriously. Because again, it's not just about women, it is about survival, it's about the future. And I think that, we must start from those, those different spaces, yeah.
I think that when we speak, like in these empowerment spaces, there's a tendency to think that we're saying, that all of us are saying, please, men should go to hell. Like, we don't need them. We're okay. I don't think that makes sense. I've never thought that made sense. So where I'm very much for like female empowerment and getting more women in leadership positions and advocating for economic power for women, I think it's important for us to understand that to get from point A to point B, we need men. And I think you're doing a really good job of sort of like sensitizing the men that are in politics about the issues that women face and why this representation is important even for them.
Yeah. And I'll say something, male allyship is so important, it's often understated. And I believe that when you see men doing good work, you need to appreciate them as well. And that's why, people like, the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Benkalo, would always have my respect. He's actually the one pushing for the reserve seat bill. People like Honorable Akin Alabi is a first-time legislator and is a spokesperson pushing for an independent candidacy, but also lots of gender-centric bill. We need more men like that who are bold and unashamed to support women. Right? These are really important. Male allyship and co-designing with men also means that you are not looking at things from a very myopic or narrow focused, viewpoint. You're looking at things from a holistic place, and then you can design, because then you can preempt what the opposing views can be. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. I'll give you an example. When Senator Natasha's case, it's still ongoing, but at the height of Senator Natasha's case, I had male politicians say, Ibijoke, you see, you want us to pass your bill. You women are just emotional. I know it's always to react like, Honorable, I understand. Senator, I understand, but and you have a conversation with them. It is what we need to do. It doesn't mean that in that moment, I'm not clenching my fist and be like, you did not say that. But I've learned emotional intelligence and I'm still learning it. Yeah. We can't just, especially always when react. You have a higher purpose, you can't just react. You need to listen, you need to observe, because in that you are drawing significance, intelligence, and you can go back to strategize. And that's how you actually defend your opponent.
But you also help them to see the hypocrisy
absolutely.
In saying women are emotional.
Oh, absolutely.
When we have specific instances of men acting very irrationally.
There's nothing as good as having opposing views, but you can have that, under a civil environment. What I've tried to do over time is, because I realized that if I'm angry and I blow, I've deprived myself, of understanding their viewpoint or speaking to them or touching them. I will, a ranking legislator. I recall when we spoke about the recessive bill, and he said, I have 3 daughters. I don't need to, blah, blah, blah. I'm not against it. And I told him, I said, Honorable, I said, what is it going to change? Nobody's coming to take your seat now. You are here for, you just speak. And I said, well, you know that it's not just about women. It's even for your children, and we spoke, and he shared his fears and everything. He said, you know what, this is the first time I'm actually listening on this bill. Let me even see what that bill is about. So you can imagine that sometimes is when you don't engage, it's easy to be triggered, but when you don't engage like that, you can lose out from a lot of relationships, meaningful ones that can then create those pathways for you to achieve what you want to achieve. Yeah,
I really love that. But real talk now, right? I feel like politics is a money game, right?
Absolutely.
And it's one thing to sensitize men, to say come on board and like support women and all of that, but what can we do to sort of galvanize women's economic power so that we can start supporting our own candidates? So how do we collaborate to compete on a sort of rudimentary level, right? So that we're creating these powerhouses where is our economic power that's bringing us to the table. So we're not begging. We're not asking for handouts. We're not saying, oh, please come and help us, or please just give us this position. It's almost like, you know what, women make up half the population, and over the years, more women have economic power. So we're raising capital in spaces that, we were not meant to be able to raise capital. But in politics, we sort of like shy away from it. The men do a lot of work to sort of like put that war chest together, right?
Unfortunately, people tend to pack issues around politics on one side. I don't want to touch it, I don't want to know. So the ignorance of it, you understand, is honestly doing us a disservice. Women should fundraise for other women. You have the boys club. I have nothing against them. Let's get the girls club working. Let's raise funds. Let's back candidates that have meritocracy. You understand? I'll give you a use case. Last election, we tried to raise funds. Who's the toughest things? I mean, we came out, want to raise $10 million for women, and I think reality just ate like, with $10 million where? And we tried to, fundraise, crowdfunding. We went as far as, partnering with artists to create like auctionable pieces. All the proceeds, we use that to support some women, right? And then we're able to like, co-fundraise with Whisker, Chimamanda Adichie, a couple of people. So it's still an evolving space. In the US, you see an institution like Emily's List, and Emily's List is was one of the earlier inspiration for ElectHER, because they've raised over $700 million for pro-choice women. Now, that is a huge pot of money, and they've seen a lot of women in government over years with good staying power. There's nothing as good as a back-end infrastructure, and we need that, because when push comes to shove, you can talk and talk and talk. If you do not put your money where your mouth is, nothing's going to happen. And, he who essentially owns the resources controls everything. Exactly. And that's what needs to happen.
We'll never have a true voice until we have economic power backing it. So I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to show you a video from Lara Unlimited, and I want you to sort of critique it.
Critique? What if I love it?
In a way, like I want to know your thoughts. Because obviously all the other women that we've been interviewing have been in corporates. And this is skewed more to sort of a political conversation. But what is so interesting to me is, obviously when we were editing this and putting it out, we wanted to put it out initially for International Women's Day. And it was interesting that the whole Natasha thing happened, and she had that whole blowout like in the Senate. Lara is this oil and gas big babe. She's so results oriented. She's up for a promotion that she's so sure she's going to get. She doesn't get it, and this is her reaction to it. I want us to speak a little bit about what that looks like in reality.
Let's talk about this in our office. Please?
Well, I think this meltdown speaks volumes as to why you weren't picked for the role in the first place.
If this is a meltdown, then let's blow this baby up, shall we? Here are the facts. Since I started working here, I've been made to feel bad for my ambitions, while the company enjoys the contributions made possible by said ambitions. You treat me like a money-hungry ingrate when I negotiate for more pay, as if I'm not allowed to be fairly compensated for the value that I create.
You are embarrassing yourself.
I wasn't finished! Competent employees like Jamie are made to shoulder the brunt of the work, while incompetent ones like Chike do absolutely nothing and get paid more. Make that make sense. I take solace in the fact that even if you decide to fire me today, your P&L will definitely feel the impact of my absence. But till then, I hope you can take this as a learning curve and use it as an opportunity to treat your staff better. Then get out of my...
Lara. Lara is me, I'm Lara.
Such an extreme, depiction.
Yeah.
But I thought that like it was a great way of sort of like showing if somebody actually really said everything that was inside of their chest.
She just had to pour it out. And I can imagine that she felt better when she did that. But there will be that point of, shit, okay, maybe I could have handled it better. Yes, I'm angry, but I want this promotion for myself. I deserve it. So what do I need to do? Obviously, she had an emotional outburst, and she's allowed to. I think a man could have done that as well, and he could have been excused, you understand? And maybe they'll grab a beer after work. They'll be like, guy, what happened to you? I'm sorry, bad day, and I think there are a lot of things. And I obviously felt triggered watching this because I'm a single lady. And honestly, sometimes I even have my girlfriend saying, what do you even need money for? You live in Ikoyi. And I'm like, you don't understand I have got big, bold ambitions. It's okay for me. I want to start thinking of my own plant kids, And I think that's another conversation entirely that people do not talk about. When you get to a certain age and you're single and you're chasing your dreams, it doesn't mean that you're packing one. It's just where your journey is. And then you're invalidated, It can be a hard pill to swallow. However, you're within an environment. It's not your company to start with. They can do and undo. They're lessened here. Second of all is they already labeled you and you got into their trap. And so in that moment, nothing you're saying makes sense. They're not even listening to you. You're just really spitting on them at the moment and they're not taking anything and they're like, what's wrong with you? And honestly, if you could visualize yourself, you probably look like a crazy monster. That's how they see you in that moment. But it might require, like I said, emotional intelligence, and it's easy to say. It's not easy. Yeah. Any average person will flip out. She was being average, but unfortunately, Lara is not an average. Yeah. Lara is someone that's beaten the earth. Lara is someone that represents millions of women across the world. Lara is a goal-getter. Lara is someone that is chasing something and she needs to stay on the game. So Lara needs to negotiate. Lara needs to bring her back. Lara also knows that the company can't do without her. So she needs to strategize and figure out a way, to negotiate and, especially when it strikes odd. So it's also about how women can negotiate, renegotiate, how women can also, the subtle art of negotiation, that's what you call it. And it's something you learn over time. Because honestly, if the company doesn't want to lose her, they would have to sit down and renegotiate. Especially when you know that your impact is felt and that it's going to essentially, have a significant implication on the company. So that's my reaction.
So let's try to sort of like turn this around to politics a little bit. So, because Lara had an emotional reaction in a corporate world setting, Natasha had an emotional reaction in a political setting. And the question that I've been asking most of my guests when it comes to Lara's outburst, right, has been, how would you advise that she sort of like navigate her way? So this has happened, you've had the emotional reaction. So what next? And now you need to like sort of like come out of this because it's like, how do you move forward? And, the answers varied. But I'm imagining that if I look at in a political sort of setting, right, you don't often get second chances. And where you don't often get second chances, and where in a corporate thing, you have the option of maybe saying, go and find another job or decide if you want to stay here and then go and apologize and all of that. Because sometimes, I would imagine that in a corporate setting, right, a lot of people can be like, oh, go and apologize and then, try to make it better within the company or, go and get another job. But I would imagine that in politics is a little bit different because when the whole thing played out with Natasha, what I kept thinking was, there are lots of people that are saying, oh, go and apologize, go and beg. And I was like, I don't think that there's room for that here because I think that apologizing will now, they will smell it as weakness as opposed to humility, and they will use that as the opportunity to humble you like even further, right? So I kept thinking, what's her next move here? So far, she's been, I guess, she was using the press, she's made sure that the conversation like stays like in like the mainstream so that she's not forgotten about. She's done so many like commendable and quite frankly, bold and brave things, right? So do you think that in politics, women get second chances? Or do we have to be mindful about not making mistakes because the stakes are higher?
I mean, no right or wrong, answers. Definitely careful of making mistakes because the stakes are high. It is what it is, essentially. I mean, you have just 4 women out of 109 senators. Picture that. However, if the deed has been done, I think that there are no permanent enemies in politics. I would tell you that. You must always align, realign, renegotiate, play the fool when you need to be. The men do it as well. She's a politician first. And so I'm sure that they will find ways to work together because as a politician, if you want to pass a bill, also, your performance is based on how many bills you can scale successfully, how many bills you've put in. And it's a game of numbers. Now, yes, you can stay on the part of the press, keeping it mainstream, but when you get back to that institution, you have to face the institution and you have to deal with people. So I think for me, it's about human relationship and interaction, understanding what, issues and what the person cares about and seeing how you can meet them halfway. Finding mediators. And that's why in any institution, you must build your allies, people that can intercede for you, people that can speak for you, people that can negotiate for you. In politics, you've seen people that, you've seen the people that prostitute around parties. Honestly, like I said, it's politics at the end of the day. It's nothing personal, right? A man could have easily done what she did, would easily do what she did and get away with it. And, back in at night, you'll be like, okay, maybe it might even be a top economic leader that calls both of them and say, guys, we have a lot at stake here, go figure it out. And I think that that's what needs to happen. Also, women, women must also learn to occupy and also negotiate that way. We have women that could intercede on our behalf, you understand, because of their stance in society, economically. So I think for me, it's about negotiating and renegotiating. It happens in any sphere, in the corporate sphere, in politics. But in politics, no alliances, no loyalties, and politics is just politics, and it's a game of self-interest. And wherever the interest lies is where you find,
I love it. I think that one of the most important things that you've talked about here is the emotional intelligence, the fact that there are no permanent, friends and no permanent enemies. That women can't afford to take these things so personally. Like you said, you used to be triggered a lot and angry a lot, and you had to learn to keep that anger to the side so that you can get things done. And I think there's so much to learn, from that. Absolutely. So I just want to show you, I want to switch gears a little bit. So we're partnering with Bamboo to talk about basically how women can invest platform. More. Yes. Bamboo is a platform that allows you access to, buy US stocks, now Nigerian stocks. They have treasury bill options, crypto options. Yeah. So I wanted to show you, we've done some mock portfolios to show you the different ones. And you tell me which one fits your personality the most.
I would say, myself, it's moderate. It's moderate. I wouldn't do conservative because I'm trying to grow my, but I would say moderate, and then you grow from there. And I always say that if you don't have, great mastery of something, you need to start moderately and then scale up from there. It means that it doesn't necessarily mean that, you don't want to take risk, but it means that you're taking calculated risk, but you can still get, a moderate results. And as you get more confident, you can then build and take bolder risks as well. So that's what I believe in, especially for portfolios that I invest.
I think that, this investing conversation is so important because, for us to have the economic power to be able to contribute to politics, to be able to back, candidates, we need to build up our own investable assets.
It's so important. It's important for everyone, honestly, to do that. I did mention, and I think I'll mention again, that last year we launched the Africa Female Founders Collective, and I'm really excited about what we're going to do with it. And I think for me is women needs to play where you have economic power. I'm not talking about just SME now. We need to build scalable ventures that can be backed, that not only investable, but are scalable as well, that can drive transformational economies. And to do that, you need women to, make bold financial and invest in your investable decisions so that they can also be investors as well. We need more female investors. a lot of women don't know what to do with money. And so, you know, a great job you're doing, fantastic work you did with your previous movies. And I just really look forward to what's going to happen with Lara Unlimited as well.
Thank you so much. So to close, one of the reasons that I started this Women Unlimited podcast was based off of the premise that as women we're unlimited in spite of our fears, in spite of the obstacles that we're faced with, in spite of our own shortcomings, whether it's emotional intelligence or anything else, right? So what makes you unlimited?
For me, it's very simple. It resonates with, you know, the saying that if your dreams don't keep you up at night, they're simply not big enough. Like when I started, I mentioned that what I'm doing is a ministry. It's not just for me, it's for my bunch children. So when I get down, and I never want to give the illusion that I'm, you know, the strong, powerful connotation of a woman or so, but I just always remember that I need to pick myself up because I am dreaming for the rest of the women we cannot dream. I am building a world where I intend to live the world, you know, much better than I met it. And that's what makes me really unlimited. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been such an insightful conversation.
Thank you. This has been so good.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what the audience thinks.
Thank you. Be good to me.
See you next time.
Thank you.
This episode is sponsored by Iron Capital.